There have been many ruthless and bloodthirsty conquerors in history who have brought endless terror and fear throughout the world. Men who have become slaves to the army of Satan and have committed the bloodiest crimes that have never been seen before, such as Attila, Genghis Khan, Zahak Marduk, and the Huns in the 5th century. Based on scientific and psychological data, after ruthless killings and long and tiring journeys to obtain gold, beautiful women and girls gain more power and show off to the elders of their people. Mercy and affection were lost in them. In the past, conquerors spent a lot of time traveling for years on the roads to achieve their desired goal. For example, the Mongol army took 3 years to reach present-day China. After the explorers reached the destination and fought bloody battles and conquered their lands, a number of soldiers and crews, either due to wounds from battles or due to fatigue and unwillingness to continue accompanying the army, preferred to be with the conquered people. Nowadays, genetic researchers have been able to uncover some ethnic and racial mixtures by tracing genetic evidence in modern humans and peoples of the world, which is consistent with historical reports of attacks and invasions of peoples on various lands and peoples. These scientists can now draw a historical atlas of the mixing of human races and ethnicities. For example, a group of genetic researchers at the University of Oxford have found that the Polish people living in the Hindu Kush mountain range carry genes that probably have roots in European peoples, who must have been brought to the East by the army of Alexander the Great. Today, we want to tell you about the remains of Alexander the Great's descendants that were recently discovered and are present in Afghanistan and Pakistan. Most people have heard of Alexander the Great, the young Greek warlord who became king at the age of 20 and had conquered the ancient world by the time of his sudden death at the age of 32. That achievement is an impressive feat in itself. But the story of Alexander the Great is a rich and complex one. Alexander the Great's father, Philip II, never expected to become king. However, after the unexpected deaths of his 2 older brothers, Philip found himself king of a country. Located to the north of warring Greek cities, Macedonia became the target of repeated attacks. In just 1 year, Philip greatly reorganized and reformed the Macedonian army, transforming the fortunes of a country that had previously stagnated. In 356 BC, Philip and his 4th wife Olympias had a son. Alexander the Great was apparently an exceptionally intelligent child. He was fascinated by foreign ambassadors, and at the age of 10, he bet with his father to own a wild stallion, which he named Bosphorus. The horse became his trusted companion and war horse. When Bosphorus died in India, Alexander named a city after him. Philip spared no expense in educating his son as a potential heir. Aristotle was Philip's guiding light, but Philip had left him with a bitter memory. He had completely destroyed Aristotle's hometown of Stagira in one campaign. Philip offered to pay for the complete reconstruction of Stagira, and Aristotle agreed to become Alexander's tutor. He educated Alexander from the ages of 13 to 16, instilling in him a love of philosophy, literature, and science. Years later, Alexander wrote regularly to his old tutor while on foreign expeditions. Alexander the Great destroyed the Achaemenid Empire, and the last king of the Achaemenid Empire fled to Afghanistan. Alexander the Great also entered Afghanistan with the intention of destroying Darius III, the last ruler of the Achaemenid dynasty, and first entered the city of Herat and then entered Bactria and waged bloody wars in this region. But before Alexander could reach Darius III, the supporters of the governor of Damghan murdered Darius III. Because the news of Alexander's destruction in order to find Darius had reached everywhere.
In 330 BC, the Khorasani soldiers stationed in the city of Herat initially allowed Alexander's troops to pass according to their wishes, but Alexander's soldiers moved with the intention of destroying both Darius and the ruler of Bactria because they had given Darius shelter. When this news reached the ears of the people of Herat, the people spontaneously revolted, as a result of which the people of Herat turned against Alexander's army and a bloody conflict ensued. Alexander was unaware of the incident, and as soon as he learned of this uprising of the people against his troops, he razed Herat to the ground within 3 days, and then established a region in Herat called Alexandria, which is the present-day Herat, to protect and house his Roman soldiers. After capturing Herat, Alexander's soldiers began their attacks on the city of Farah and captured the areas of Sistan. During this campaign, they also captured the areas on both sides of the Helmand River and captured present-day Kandahar. Taking the city of Kandahar was easier for Alexander's army because all the strategic points were occupied by Alexander's army. In 331 BC, Alexander's army was able to capture the last defense center of Arachosia, Arkanda. After capturing modern-day Kandahar, he built strong centers and bases with the local forces of the region and, at Alexander's request, appointed a trusted person as the commander-in-chief of the said region. By that time, Alexander had captured 3 important provinces of ancient Afghanistan, including Herat, Balochistan, and Kandahar. It was at this time that the rulers of Herat at the time, with the cooperation of Bahruz, the ruler of Bactria, formed more than 2,000 soldiers and intended to regain the independence of Herat. Alexander was informed of this action by the rulers of Herat and immediately marched to Herat with 14,000 troops and besieged all of Herat. A fierce battle broke out, and Alexander burned all of Herat. At this time, the people of Balochistan and Arachosia also revolted to free themselves from Roman rule, but they were still met with Alexander's boundless wrath. In the meantime, according to historians, Alexander lost more than 80,000 of his soldiers. In one of the historical documents from the 1st century AD attributed to Alexander, he's quoted as saying that the most warlike people I have ever seen were the people of Khorasan, referring to the people of present-day Afghanistan. After many battles and suffering great human losses, Alexander decided to march on the city of Kabul and finally entered Kapisa via Paglan and established his Alexandria of soldiers in the present-day Bagram. In 329 BC, Alexander attacked the troops of Besut, the ruler of Kabul, via Andrab. Besut resisted with the efforts of 8,000 soldiers, but he could not withstand the numerous soldiers of Alexander and fled. But with the cooperation of the Western soldiers on the other side of the Amudarya River, he continued his targeted attacks. This situation continued until 327 BC. Meanwhile, Alexander befriended one of the Western commanders and eventually married a beautiful girl named Roxana and went to the modern city of Takhad and founded the Ai-Khanum region, thus bringing parts of the West and the Hindu Kush mountain range under his control. After his marriage to Roxana, Alexander again decided to conquer the eastern regions of Afghanistan and entered the present-day Kunar regions in Afghanistan through the Deranta. In the aforementioned areas, after heavy fighting, Alexander was wounded for the first time. The ruler of Kunar at that time was named Yusufzai. Alexander was forced to go to Bajo and Chitaral to treat his wounds, and during his trip to these areas, he also captured Chitaral and built another Alexandria in the port of Karachi, and from there he turned to Balochistan, which he had previously captured. As soon as he reached Babylon, he contracted malaria there, according to some books, and as a result, he died at the age of 32. Meanwhile, according to the data of historical researchers, Alexander stayed for a while in the current Nordistan region to treat his wounds. It is said that he was involved in war in these areas for 5 years, and during this time that he was in the mentioned area, a number of Alexander's soldiers had blood relations with the indigenous people of the region. According to Nature, a group of genetic researchers from the University of Oxford have found after extensive research that the Kalash people of the current Nordistan and the Kunar people living in the Hindu Kush mountain range in Pakistan and Afghanistan have genes that are likely rooted in European people who were brought to the east from Europe by the army of Alexander the Great. According to the same report, human history,
from military invasions and slavery and the slave trade to various forms of civilian migration, all accompanied by other events and mostly unclear relations, has ultimately led to a kind of racial and ethnic mixing between completely separate ethnic groups, which is now recorded in the genetic structure of their descendants, that is, modern humans, and its effects still remain.
This ethnic difference, recorded in the genetic structure of today's people, can also be traced. As a result, researchers can trace these developments to obtain the genetic structure of these people and understand the genetic information of current living populations that had racial intermingling with other ethnic groups in the world. In these studies, new findings are presented as a map based on mutual relationships, in which researchers have been able to find interesting information about the time and manner of intermingling of 4,000 ethnic groups using statistical methods. According to the researchers, the correspondence of these genetic findings with historical records adds to the validity and accuracy of these results. Genetic traces are consistent with historical reports of migration or attacks of ethnic groups. For example, historical records indicate that the Hazara ethnic groups living in Afghanistan and Pakistan were partly descendants of the Mongol invaders. Now, genetic research has also fully confirmed this point and shown that the Mongol DNA was introduced among the Hazara people at a time when the Mongol Empire was expanding in the region, both historically and geographically. Another example is the discovery of alien DNA in the completely isolated Kalash ethnic group in a remote valley in Pakistan, which has evidence of its introduction by people from the Middle East or Europe. Researchers have not yet been able to clarify the exact geographical source of this alien DNA, whether it was from Europe or the Middle East. The introduction of this alien DNA into these people was also between 990 and 210 BC. That is, a period that, according to history, has a kind of overlap and time correspondence with the invasion of Alexander the Great. Simon Myers, a statistician from the University of Oxford and one of the researchers active in this project, referring to this point, says that in the future we hope to be able to find sources or that older genetic pattern by adding the data obtained to the existing ancient DNA samples. However, even then, it is very difficult to pinpoint the exact sources of ethnic mixing that occurred among genetically similar groups. It is also very difficult to accurately separate genetically similar groups from other genetically similar groups in ethnic groups that have been involved in multiple waves of population groups over time. In the end, after Alexander, his vast empire was divided among his commanders. If you have been with us this far, I would like to thank you for liking the video and sharing your thoughts with us in the comments section. Thanks.